Hey everybody, we are back again. We are looking at the Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 4, the classic Fantastic Four run. We are continuing our read of all Fantastic Four. I'm doing it in preparation of the movie, but the MCU movie in 2025. But if you're watching this later, that may not be relevant. So we are at the end of an era. This is the end of Kirby and Stan Lee's legendary run. This was for a long time the longest consecutive run of a writer and artist together until Bendis and Bagley did it with beat it with Ultimate Spider-Man. So this is the DM cover. We have the Thing right here at the bottom. And this is the 100th issue. Overall, I'm going to be honest, this is the weakest of the run between the team. So collected here, let's just talk a little bit about what we actually have here. We have Fantastic Four 94 through 125 and Fantastic Four The Lost Adventure. I'll give it a little more detail on what that is, but basically it's the lost issue of Kirby in Stan's run. So Kirby, and this under here is pretty generic, pretty standard. This is on all of the Fantastic Four books. So in here we have Stan Lee. For the first time, we're going to get other writers other than Stan Lee in this book. We're going to get Archie Goodwin, the second ever writer on Fantastic Four, and then Roy Thomas introduces to the book. He takes over way bigger, starting with Volume 5, and becomes basically the successor to Stan Lee at Marvel. We have Jack Kirby, and once he leaves the book, John Romita does a couple issues right after Kirby. Looks like they were probably thinking Romita was going to take over the book, but then Big John Buscema takes over for the vast majority of this book, and including going through Volume 5. And I just love Buscema's art. He's fantastic. And then they brought in like some Ron Frenz came in. He had him in. He had a long run on Thor, I think in the 80s and early 90s. But he comes in to help finish the lost issue. So like I said, it starts from 1970 with issue 94. It goes all the way through August of 72. They have the covers for annual 8 and 9, but annuals 8 and 9 were simply reprints of previous annuals. So there was no new content there. So there's no pages there. It's just the covers. But this area is really interesting. So Kirby stays on for probably the first quarter of this book. He ends at, I believe, 102 is his last official issue. And then from there, Stan Lee continues for basically all the book except for like 4 issues. So this is still mostly all Stan Lee, but Kirby does leave at 102. Now, when I get to the lost issue, I'll kind of show you kind of what happens there. But it opens up with one of the best issues within the book, which is basically they're trying to find a babysitter for Franklin. And this is the first introduction of Agatha Harkness. And obviously she has Agatha all along. She's in WandaVision. She has her own show now. Very different version of the character, but she is throughout this book, and she's pretty great. I love Agatha. But this issue is when we first meet her, and it's very like haunted house, spooky. The Frightful Four comes back, and they're trying to impede the team. Turns out that Medusa, who was with the Frightful Four but is now with the Inhumans, she actually betrays the Frightful Four here this is where we see that she actually is definitively a good guy now. And Agatha basically beats the whole team and scares the mess out of them until the Frightful Four leaves. Just also standard spoiler warnings. I will try not to spoil everything or give away major plots. I'm going to try to keep it high level. But if you're trying to go in blind, probably not the best, because I will just give you a flavor of what the stories are. And then I'm going to be honest, so these last Kirby issues are pretty bad. Not from the art, I don't mean that, but just the stories overall are extremely lackluster compared to everything we got through the first 3 volumes. So this one is like set in World War III, but basically it's like this guy is here. He's like a delegate. He's trying to start World War III or something. This just wasn't interesting. They're just trying to stop basically a diplomatic incident from happening. To say this is forgettable is an understatement. It is not a good story, in my opinion. Then we have the Mad Thinker comes back again with his androids, and I kind of like the Mad Thinker, but this just wasn't that interesting, to be honest with you. The monster from Lake Lagoon, he's gonna come through at the end of the book as well, but again, it's extremely generic and not at all interesting. Here, it starts to hint at something interesting. So, Reed is trying to decrypt the Kree language because they're afraid of if the Krees end up coming back. So that setup is interesting, but it ends up just being another robot, which is throughout this book. It's just so many androids and robots that it really becomes monotonous, and everything, all the stories start to bleed together because there's no freshness in what's happening. Johnny is going crazy. So basically, Crystal throughout this book is dealing with needing to go back to the Inhumans. There's a combination of reasons why. The first is like Black Bolt is sick, so she needs to go back. It comes up again when Maximus sort of takes over the Inhumans again, and then it comes up again once we realize that Crystal is actually used to having been in a very pure environment with clean air and such, and so being in the human world or the regular world is actually sort of polluting her lungs. So she has to go back to the Inhuman camp a few times, and Johnny tries to go get her a few times. It really kind of, the Johnny and Crystal love plot really gets stuck in a really fierce loop throughout this, so which isn't that interesting, honestly. We get the 100th issue. So this, but even this, they're trying to do all the villains that they've been fighting. But it's just androids. It's just, and that's not a spoiler. That's the setup. The setup is that they've created androids of all the different villains that they fought, and they're gonna now have to go through all of them. But when it's not the actual villains, it's honestly not that interesting. Battle is in it. We're gonna just kind of, not gonna go issue by issue. We'll just go through some of what we're seeing. This one is kind of interesting. So, and so we get Submariner teaming up with Magneto throughout this, and it's like a 3-issue run. This is very interesting, but this is also where Kirby jumps off of the book. Because I want to go to, yeah, so when you get to 104, let me see, 103. Yeah, so 103 is John Romita comes in to finish it versus Kirby, who ends at 102 for now. For now. And this actually is pretty good because you get to see how powerful Magneto is and how he sort of manipulates Namor and manipulates the Fantastic Four to try to take over the world. This is actually pretty good. This story is really good. Let's see. Exposed at last, Monster Secrets. And a lot of this book is just super forgettable. This one is interesting. So Johnny here. So basically Reed is trying to cure the Thing again. But make it so he had previously in the last volume permanently cured the Thing, but because the Thing needed to, help save the day and be super heroic, Thing consciously decided to turn back into the Thing, or Ben Grimm decided to turn back into the Thing. And now here's Reed trying to save him again. But while he's trying to save him, there is someone storming the streets, and Sue is in trouble trying to hold off this villain by herself, and she is now in danger. So Reed is torn between going to save his wife and being at this crucial part of this experiment to save Ben. So Johnny needs to keep him cold and absorbs all the moisture out of the room, all traces of heat out of the room, so that it kind of goes to a sub-zero temperature around the Thing, which is a really cool use of Johnny's power. They're starting to play with the things that they can do with their powers, which is really interesting. And basically through this experiment, the Thing is going to be cured in a way that he can voluntarily transform back and forth between Ben the Thing and Ben Grimm, but it does something to his morals and his conscience. So he's kind of a jerk, which obviously is not the right outcome. And he becomes, so this is some transforming. He becomes very aggressive, very jerkish, not like Ben at all of who he is. So we see that, and so he goes, obviously he's going to end up going bad through this. So now this one is really interesting. So 108 is done by Jack Kirby. And basically what happened is before he left at 102, he had submitted a plot for a story that didn't get finished. They decided not to do it and not publish it. So he left, but then they ended up which was, I think this was supposed to be 102. But then they ended up publishing the Namor story. So then they do end up publishing it in 108 with so it says last minute revision. So Ramita and Bashima came in to finish the issue. So basically the stuff that, and you're going to start to see here. So the stuff that Jack Kirby did basically was used as a flashback. So we're introducing this character as if he has always been here, or he was here from a previous encounter, but this is actually their first encounter with him. So he's defeating the group, and they're doing sort of some flashbacks to something that hasn't happened yet, that we haven't actually seen before. So they're like, oh, remember this? And it's like, no, you haven't actually published a story about it. But this is a guy who basically has the power of negative energy, and he's trying to get into the negative zone so that he can absorb and become all powerful. But as he goes into the negative zone, he ends up encountering a nihilist. So it's a nihilist versus the Nega Man to absorb this energy. I think they ended up working together very briefly. So they go in to stop Nega Man from getting becoming all powerful, from absorbing this negative energy, and then 2, to stop Annihilus and his team from getting out and into the real world. And then the lost issue, which we're going to see that's in the back here, actually is what that first encounter was. I will go to it now. So basically, they finish. This is the Lost Adventure. This was the original script that they're flashing back to here. This is that actual story. It's a little different, though. There was some changes. But basically, they had, you know, a team of people come and help to finish the pages that weren't done. I think this was actually published in 2008 was when they finally restored this. But this is the original plot and story of them first encountering this individual. See, so even here, he was the Mega Man originally, but until he was adapted to be the Nega Man, which actually makes more sense. And so you do get the full uncut Lost Adventure here. And you see how like the even the resolution to the story is kind of different. They change it to make it fit a little better. So that is sort of interesting, and it's an okay story at best, to be honest. Now we get a long like fight back and forth with the Thing, who has now kind of not gone evil, but is very much out for himself, and the Hulk comes in to help to stop the Thing. So Reed Richard calls out to Bruce Banner, the scientist, to try to help cure the Thing. But in Bruce Banner coming to the scene of to meet with Dr. Richards, he gets angry, and so the Hulk comes out, and we get this back and forth fight. And this fight is still, every time they fight, it's just so good. It's so good every time they fight. So we get a long fight sequence between the Hulk and the Thing, which is really interesting. And you start to wonder why the Thing is so anxious to get back to Ben Grimm, because every time he turns back to Ben Grimm, Alicia, who he wants to marry, doesn't like him anymore, or doesn't like him nearly as much as the Thing. So there's some incongruency in the motivations of some of the characters. But we get the Overmind. Now this is really, really interesting. So the Eternals officially, I think it's 75 or 76. They don't officially show up until 75 or 76. So after Kirby leaves, he goes and does the Fourth World, creates the New Gods, creates Darkseid and all that. He comes back to Marvel and he creates the Celestials and the Eternals. And that's where the Eternals are credited as the very first appearance of the Eternals. But we get this character, the Overmind. So now this is 1971. So this is issue 114, 115. And we get this character called the Overmind. And what's interesting about the Overmind, I'm trying to see where they actually mention it, but he is the Eternals. He dubbed themselves, so the race that the Overmind is from are the Eternals. So that's, I don't know, that's weird. That's interesting. So, because the Eternals are throughout here. It's not the Eternals that we know. The mythology is different, but the name does first appear here. And this is basically a conquering race. They were a warring race. They were conquering all these areas. They become until they go to war with this other group of people who their planet is as big as a galaxy. The planet is as big as a galaxy, Gigantus. And basically through this war, the civilizations get destroyed and the Eternals lose, and they put all their remaining population, which is 1 billion people, all synthesize their mind into one person who becomes the Overmind. And so he's nigh all powerful. So he's coming to Earth to subjugate it, and he can do things like erase your memories and control you. And so he takes over Reed, which requires Doctor Doom to join up with the Fantastic Four to stop this guy. So I won't tell you how that wraps up, but Doctor Doom fights with the Fantastic Four against Reed in this Overmind character. And this is really interesting. This story is pretty interesting, especially how it ultimately resolves. Diablo's here. Not that interesting, to be honest with you. But this is when Archie Goodwin takes over the book for a little bit and does, like, I think a couple issues of writing, the second writer ever. And then we get the third writer, Roy Thomas, and we do this interesting thing with the Black Panther. And I want to show you guys this. This is really interesting. So in this story, so in this story, T'Challa calls himself the Black Leopard instead of the Black Panther. And they ask him, they say, hey, why are you calling yourself the Black Leopard instead of the Black Panther? So what's happening in the real world is, so right after the Black Panther was created in the comic books, I think it was just like a couple months to a year later, the political party in the 60s and 70s, the political party of the Black Panther Party came out, calling themselves the Black Panther. So this was their way of trying very temporarily to distance their character. And the character is not based off of the political party. The character came first. But this was their way of trying to distance themselves from the real world politics that were happening at the time, of saying, hey, we won't be the Black Panther, we'll be the Black Leopard. But I think this is very quickly, I think he does go back to Black Panther in another issue. Then we get the Airwalker. He's a guy who's coming from heaven. Basically, he's an angel. The angel Gabriel, who is coming, and he is searching for the Silver Surfer. Turns out that he is a new herald. I won't spoil what he is, but he is coming back for the Silver Surfer. Trying to avoid some of the spoilers there. There's a reason he's interested in the Silver Surfer and why he's coming back and why he is here. I just don't want to. Yeah. But then, so I won't spoil the why. Just understand the angel Gabriel has come to Earth. He's wreaking havoc. Everyone's panicking all over the world. There's riots all over the world. And he's preparing for everyone to die. But he's really interested in the Surfer. And I'll let you read why that may be and what's really going on. But then we end with this story about the lagoon monster that came back. And is he bad? Is he not? It's not that interesting. It's really not that interesting. Here we go in the back. We get some. So these are the annuals that are not reprinted here because they're just reprints. So annual number 8 is just a reprint of annual number 1. And then annual number 9 was reprint of Fantastic Four 43 and annual number 3. Then we have, some letters from Dick Ayers, Joe Sinnott. I hope I'm saying that right. He's one of the unsung heroes of Fantastic Four because he did the inking for Jack Kirby, most of Jack Kirby's work, and he did most of the inking for as John Buscema takes over the book to make sure that the book stays with a consistent feel even as the pencilers change, which I think is just fantastic. He does fantastic work. This is a list of all the Fantastic Four done by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. We get some original art here. We get the Lost issue in the back. And then we get some covers and some artwork throughout. This artwork is inked already. So it's not the raw pencils, but it's the inked work. And so it's pretty good. I say this was still good to have, as these are the final issues of Kirby and Stan Lee. Overall, though, if you're like, I just want, what is the definitive Jack and Stan Lee run, and I just want the best of the best, you would probably be okay just sticking to the first 3 volumes, to be honest with you. I'm a completionist here in this sense. So it's okay. It's not bad by any means. Like, there's some good stories with Namor and Magneto. There was a good story with the Overmind. That actually was pretty interesting. And when Gabriel the Angel comes, that was pretty interesting. But overall, of the first 4 volumes, this is definitely the weakest of the 4. But after this volume, we go to 5, in which there is no Stan Lee, there is no Jack Kirby, and so how does the run continue? And we'll continue our march just through all of Fantastic Four. I don't know how far we're gonna go, but I'll just keep reading it. Thank you.